Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name's Ilan and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host Jeremy. How are you, my friend?
Great, mate. I'm well. Happy to be here. Episode 17. Very excited for this one. Bit more of a generalized topic today, but one that I think a lot of people can take a lot away from and bit fun to talk about as well. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, well, we'll be speaking about social media. Some of the points we'll be covering is the impact of it. So specifically, social media is not inherently good or bad. Rather, it's how we use it, some of the benefits of it, and some of the negatives, and just some of our tips for navigating social media, especially in our formative years. So really excited to crack on with it. So first point is social media, it's not inherently good or bad, but it's how we use it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people will stem towards thinking, social media, these guys are just going to say how bad it is. It's bad for our brains. It's bad for our mental health. But it can be an incredible platform for a multitude of different reasons. I think we need to think about that it is more so the people that use it might use it in a negative way. It's how you use it.
Yes, 100%. At the end of the day, it is a tool. We want it to be a tool that works for us rather than against us.
Especially in our most formative years, right?
Correct.
This is why we've chosen to talk about it today, because in our formative years, our adolescence, our early adulthood, we are extremely impressionable, and it's really important to be aware of the pros, the cons, the dangers, and the incredible good that it can do for society as well.
Correct. And social media, in a sense, is quite a broad term, but it encompasses a lot of things. It's your Facebook, it's your Instagram, it's your LinkedIn, it's your TikTok, it's even YouTube, it's things like Reddit. There are so many excellent platforms with different purposes, and I think now we're living in a more globalized world. And part and parcel thanks to social media, because we can now connect with someone on the other side of the world. It's quite obvious, right? Even we had the earthquake a few nights ago, the catastrophic Melbourne earthquake that was. And the first thing that we did was hop on WhatsApp and ask, did everyone just feel that, or am I going crazy? So, perfect example of connectedness.
Back in the day, you'd have to send a postal letter, hey?
Well, it's funny because now if you're doing like a long distance relationship, you can just FaceTime them. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, you'd have to write postal letters. It was way more romantic, I suppose.
Way more romantic and easy to say distance makes the heart grow fonder. But I think we're of the belief now that, social media is a blessing, and we're so lucky to have it for reasons like that, for reasons like relationships and connectedness from wherever you are in the world.
Exactly. Jeremy, tell me though, social media is a great platform for cultivating and expressing your creative genius. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, I think it allows you to tap into areas that you might never have dreamed of tapping into before, be it YouTube, be it TikTok. I think the fact that people can now build careers based on social media or from social media is an incredible thing. A lot of people are quick to harp on the fact that that person's an influencer. So what are they really doing with their life other than posting photos on social media? But I think there's a lot of merit in it. People are clearly following that person for a reason. They're getting value in some sort of way, whether it is value about their mental health, or about career, or about gym or exercise, or if it's just value of they like what the person looks like, attractiveness, because some people are just quite good looking and they have a big following for being good looking, but I think there's merit in that as well. So there's something for everyone on there, and I think it's a great means of exploring your creativity, just like us with this podcast. Not something that, the furthest I was to ever being creative, which I spoke about, I think, back in episode 1, was my year 9 art skill ability. But I think this has allowed me personally to tap into a different side of creativity, and social media is something that I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know, whether it be, posting reels, posting grid posts, and connecting with an audience in some sort of way that I never thought I'd be capable of doing, and I'm sure you can speak for the same reasoning.
No, definitely. And I think social media can cater, as you said, to various age demographics. And one of the ways I think me and you have been using it is through kind of marketing It's great marketing tool. No matter if you're in a business, if you're doing something for a hobby, it's really effective for that. I remember Ned Brockman. So the great Ned Brockman, he ran from Perth to Sydney promoting for homelessness.
Yeah.
So it was a charitable run. And the way I heard about him, obviously, was through social media. And he was able to market such a great message and, the challenge of running from Perth to Sydney on social media. And that's just like a prime example of how you can use social media to your advantage, is by spreading a message, by spreading awareness.
And cultivating a community, because at the end of the day, we were able to view his updates every single day. What's Ned up to tonight? How much is he raising today? What are the challenges? What are the things that he's faced and overcome? And that would be impossible without social media. So just a prime example of how incredible it is for building a community and spreading an incredible message that is much bigger than, he could probably have ever dreamt of, and we could have ever dreamt of, because it was just incredible to see. And I think it's definitely inspired a multitude of people in the world today.
Yeah, and social media can also be, or really just the internet, but social media can be an excellent sort of platform for getting more knowledge on a topic, right? If you want to learn how to cook, which is something that I'm so poor at, the best place to turn is the internet. But it could also be groups, going on Facebook groups that have a specific sort of niche to it, like, a cooking group where people share their recipes. Or if you want to boost your financial literacy, for example, there's a Facebook group for that. There's also obviously Facebook Marketplace where you can do a bit of wheeling and dealing, get a bit of extra cash.
Something for everyone.
So that's one thing. And I think the productivity side of it is so huge as well, because connecting with others, finding ways of kind of optimizing your daily routine so you get more things done. These are almost things that people in our parents' generation didn't have that luxury. And I think now social media, it's growing and it's going to forever be growing, but it's now kind of facilitated this sort of environment where you can do things more productively, you can get extra knowledge, you can surround yourself with like-minded communities. Because suppose there's an individual who has, they're really into their trains, they love collecting trains, and their friends make fun of them for it, right? Why do you collect trains? Like, what's so special about it? And they decide, you know what? Let me hop on social media. I'm sure there's like-minded individuals. There's people who love fitness and they will join like-minded fitness groups, running groups, for example. There's something
for everyone. There's that bloke on TikTok from the UK who's obsessed with trains. I can't remember his name, but
that's why I brought him up.
He's on my feed all the time and I bloody love what he's about. Just a bloke that's obsessed with trains, and he's built a following based on that. But I think it also, people don't just follow someone because of maybe what they're posting. They're following someone because of their character as well. And he's a prime example. People probably just love his character. They love to see the enthusiasm he has for such a niche topic, perhaps. And that's a key element of why social media is so good, because it allows you to express your enthusiasm and your passion for something that, people might not normally think about. And that builds a community that spreads positivity and happiness amongst a wider group of people.
And I think it'd be remiss of us, kind of negligent of us, to not acknowledge its use during COVID lockdowns. I know we're kind of past that period now, but, I think social media, for all its kind of negative reputation, had an excellent sort of mechanism in lockdown, helping you stay connected with the friends. I remember back, in that first wave, you would see TikTok dances of nurses in hospitals dancing and trying to spread some love and positivity in a time where hospitals were overrun with COVID cases and, the world was looking quite dark. So it can definitely be used to spread positivity, especially in a time of darkness.
Yeah, and I think it's an also something that people are taking on board now that typically they might not have in the future. I think what I'm referring to is, you look at the AFL community these days, and there are so many AFL superstars jumping on social media, jumping on TikTok and doing daily routines, doing vlogs, doing game day vlogs, whether it is in the AFL, whether it is just in grassroots football. There are some incredible people doing incredible things on there.
You'd be speaking about my boy CP5, Christian Petrarca.
Well, he's
my man. I love him.
He's a pioneer of it, isn't he? It's him. It's Bailey Smith. You know, even like Isaac Quaynor. Like there's plenty. And then on grassroots level as well, there's a big following of it.
Oh yeah, Div 12 Rezzies.
Yeah, well, people are doing it, and I think it's also like pioneered by, you know, like Tom Bolt, Prime Train. He's doing some great things with that, and I think it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see that people in an industry that might not typically be such a creative industry on face value, they're exploring that creativity, and people love it. People just love to see the insight into something that they might not have seen before. Like typically you would only see insight into like an AFL lifestyle on like a Friday night football match at halftime where 7 AFL have like a little snippet that, you know, has been done in prior weeks of, you know, like Scott Pendlebury's morning routine.
And his basketball background.
But nowadays you can just like go on TikTok and see something new every single day that a player is uploading, and it's fantastic.
And it's funny because there's a common theme there, which is they're cultivating a personality away from what they're known for, which is their occupation. And I think that's why social media is so excellent, is when you use it for you, you can cultivate a personality that's separate to what you're maybe known for in your community. And so it is, in a way, kind of the world is at your oyster. So that's probably some of kind of what we've just outlined as some of these examples of how social media can work for you. The reality is social media, like anything else, is not black and white. It's not just good and bad, but there's also a bit of ugly, right?
Yeah.
So social media, when we are so young and impressionable and, you know, everyone around us is on there, it can have some deleterious effects on our mental health, on our sleep, on a whole range of things. And I want to kind of get into that as well, because the purpose of this next part of the segment of our show isn't to scare people off social media. It's rather the opposite. It's rather to get kind of educate some form of awareness around it so we know how to use social media, because it'd be negligent of us to not outline the risks.
Like you said, how to use it, because like we mentioned earlier, it's how you use it which can be detrimental or it can be fantastic, not the platform itself. We're so quick as a society to blame the tool, to jump on and say TikTok's bad, it's ruining people's minds, Instagram's terrible, people are constantly comparing themselves to others. That is purely how you use it.
It definitely is. And I'm going to read off some stats to you. And look, it's going to sound alarming because we've just gone from a really kind of positive side, but now we'll contrast it with what you could say is the negative. So social media, they say it can contribute to a sense of loneliness, anxiety, depression, and they usually cite things like social comparison. So when you see someone on social media posting a photo of their perfect life, maybe they're constantly on holiday, they're obviously just trying to portray the best versions of themselves. So it doesn't necessarily seem, it's not reflective of reality. Although when we look at it, tend to compare ourselves and think, why is our reality worse than theirs? And they've done a few published studies where they say teenagers and young adult users who spend the most time on Instagram, Facebook, and even related platforms like TikTok have a 13 to 66% higher rate of reported depression than those who spent the least time. Now, some might ask, is it correlational or is it causation? What do you think?
Yeah, well, firstly, that's a big field of a statistic, like 13 to 66% reporting higher rate of depression. So bear in mind that that's a big difference, like 13 to 66%. But like you said, that stat can definitely just scare people straight off the bat. So this is why it's important to, like, whilst recognizing that these stats are there and they're factual, it's about recognizing that it's how you choose to implement those stats into your life. So acknowledging that those stats do exist, and that is the first step to making sure that you don't fall into that bracket. You don't fall into that position where you are one of those 66% who are experiencing higher rates of sadness through social media, because you can put in the tools in place to not reach those levels and to use it as a positive.
So it's just that awareness at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And although we don't know if it's like a direct causal link, there's some kind of, a few scientific theories that suggest why that might be the case. So one theory is called the displacement behavior theory of social media. It's the idea that time spent on social media will replace the time spent with face-to-face interactions, particularly with close friends and family. Thus, it can reduce your overall sense of well-being. And there's clear evidence growing of mobile phone usage and social media use, and some evidence of a decline in face-to-face communication. Case in point was the lockdowns. You could only, in really kind of hard-style lockdowns, you were forced to really kind of increase your use of social media to connect with others. Now, the reason I find that interesting is because one of the biggest predictors of overall of well-being is connection to others, is your relationship with others. So if social media can now kind of say, you know what, we can speak to each other, but it's not face-to-face, that can help explain, at least for me, like theoretically, it can help explain why social media can predict maybe more depressive symptomology and more anxiety, because you're literally buffering against that face-to-face interaction. That's not to say you can't connect with people on social media and maybe spend less time in person, but it's just something to be aware of. What do you reckon?
Yeah, and it's a buffer that is trying to fight against an evolutionary concept. Being humans, we're used to being in packs, being in groups, being together in person. So there's no surprise that it was obviously something that was really hard to navigate in times like COVID, something we all know about, so there's no point really harping on about. But I think when I think of my personal experiences, which we've mentioned before, me, my group of friends, all of us, we were really good at least once a day when we were allowed to, going to the park, having that social connection, that face-to-face connection, going for a walk for an hour. Because without that, I know that I was declining when I wasn't doing those things, because being behind the screen it's just not the same. And it's not the same because of these reasons that you've just mentioned. We're used to human interaction. When we don't have that human interaction, that is when we most decline. And why is this such an important message to spread? Because taking to social media is probably the easy option. It's probably the most convenient way that you can see someone,
virtually connect with them.
Virtually on a screen. It is easy, it is convenient, and there is no effort really involved other than punching numbers and letters into your screen. So this is why we're talking about it, to stimulate people to not fall into that trap. Recognize that we are made to form face-to-face connections, and we need to keep actualizing that, promoting it.
For sure. Tell me about body image though in social media.
Well, it's a massive issue, right? It's a massive. Well, you know what? It could be used as a positive tool as well.
Here's the yin yang, right?
Here's the yin yang. Exactly. It's again how you use it, because I know for me personally, there are times where you look at bodies and you think, wow, like that is an incredible physique. If I'm looking at like someone's, physique that, they're going to the gym or whatever, there are days where I'll look at that and think, I will never get to that physique. I'm not capable of that. And I wish I could get to that physique. But, and it makes me feel crap about myself, because I know deep down that I might be putting in hard work, but I don't see myself looking like that person, right? So those are the days where I'm thinking this is terrible. But then there are also days where I see something like an incredible physique and it stimulates me to go harder, go that extra mile. It inspires me to do more. And that is probably one of the reasons why I first started going to the gym, is seeing some of these physiques on social media and thinking, I want to be that. Because when I was 16 years old, I was a skinny, lanky, Gumby looking plasticine thing. And I wanted to change that, right? So it's employing how you use it, but also recognizing that, when you are looking at these things and experiencing days where it makes you feel a bit down about yourself, it's important to recognize that a lot of these images on social media can be photoshopped, can be great lighting, great angles. Maybe that person hasn't even eaten before taking that photo. They're looking a little bit flatter. These are all factors that we just don't know about when we first view that image. So it's so quick to see it and judge it. Like we said, we're very impressionable people, so we have to bear in mind these other factors too.
For sure, and I think the stats do support that. Some studies show that 88% of women compare themselves to images they observe on social media, with over half of them emphasizing the comparison is unfavorable, along with 65% of men comparing themselves with images on social media.
It's big numbers.
With 37% of them indicating that the comparison is unfavorable. So the idea there is it's as easy to kind of become down in the dumps after looking at, an image, an unrealistic body type, right? As you said, the great lighting, the Photoshop. You're not going to be presenting your most kind of vulnerable self.
Yeah.
You're going to be promoting what you believe is the best kind of physical attributes that you have. Just like the person who wants to promote their influencer lifestyle is promoting all the first class, vacations they take to Dubai.
That's right.
So
it's a highlights reel.
It is a highlights reel.
Instagram's a highlights reel, and I don't think that's for a bad thing, because I know me personally, I like looking at positive content. I like looking at incredible things that makes me go, wow. Like I want to be captivated by it. I don't think I'm the type of character that would be captivated by seeing sad content. To each their own. Everyone's different, but that's me personally. I like the fact that there's a lot of, positivity, and it's a highlights reel. I know that I'm only posting like my highlights on my personal feed. And that's obviously something that I think a lot of people know. A lot of people know it's a highlights reel, and just again, reminding themselves of that is really important.
Definitely, for sure. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that I think a lot of the mental health struggles a lot of our young people do go through, social media is such a huge part of it. We have to be completely honest with ourselves and acknowledge that because of these factors, because of body image comparison, things like that, the lack of face-to-face interactions. When people say why are young people struggling with mental health more than they did maybe 20, 30 years ago, it is social media, I'd say, is the bulk of the contributing factor. I'm not sure if they've looked into other factors, but I think social media on its own, as that umbrella term, it can have a cascade of effects. The time you spend with others, the comparison.
I think though, one thing that it is improving on social media, I mean, I've just sat here and spoken about how it is a highlights reel for most people, but I think people are starting to speak out about the negative things that they are experiencing on social media as well, and experiencing in their lives. And I think that's something that's probably more common in the last 5 years than ever before. I think COVID was really good at stimulating us to start talking about things that are maybe not so good as well. I mean, even in the media recently, just with like, if you look at the sports media recently, there's articles all the time talking about, like, for example, Carlton in the media and how, the team's not doing so well. And, Paddy Cripps, captain, he's come out and he said that, he's not prepared to have his character being questioned. And he's basically ridden off the critics and acknowledged the hard times that he's going through, but took a stand and acted out against it. And that's what I think a true leader is. And social media is so good at being able to represent your leadership skills on that behalf.
No, definitely. Look, again, it comes back to how you can express that personality on and off field, outside of your occupation. So yeah, it's huge.
Outside of your occupation. So when we switch off, you just said that, we go home, we're, scrolling, but, night time comes around and we hit the sack. So how do you reckon social media impacts our sleep or, our nighttime routine?
Excellent question. Well, from just like the biology aspect of it, your phone emits blue light and that will suppress melatonin. And melatonin in your brain signals when it's time to go to bed. So
just to explain, melatonin is a hormone and it releases when we are ready to go to bed.
Well, yeah, it's just part of that circadian cycle. So every night, everyone's got an endogenous internal clock that operates around, I'd say, roughly like a 20, I could be completely wrong here, but it's like around...
You're going Andrew Huberman on us.
I'm not. I'm really not. But I'm just giving you the bare bones stuff. Everyone's got an internal clock, and it tells you when when to be hungry, when you're sleepy, when to be awake.
Mm.
And melatonin is that signal in your brain and across your body that, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but it signals when it's time for bed.
Yep.
And what the blue light from your phone does is it suppresses the secretion of melatonin, meaning you'll stay awake for longer. And even when you do go to bed, your sleep will be objectively worse than if it would have been if you didn't expose yourself to kind of that blue light. Now, I know the iPhone, like here's probably more of a practical tip that I kind of use every night, and it's not it's not like a saving grace, but it's still better than nothing. It's got that blue light kind of feature. You've got things like blue light, glasses. I can't remember.
Like the phone dims, I think. Like
the phone dims.
Like I think I've got it at like 10:30 p.m. The phone kind of dims and it supposedly decreases that blue light.
Correct.
Whether it's having an effect on me, don't know.
Well, get a Whoop. Get a Whoop. Whoop sponsor us so we can figure out if, our sleep's impacted from our nighttime phone use. But yeah, and look, that's going to have a cascading effect with regards to the next day. Because if you're sleeping poorly one night, you're getting less sleep, you'll be more tired the next day. And, if that cycle can become quite insidious.
It's just about balance and routine.
I mean,
very cliche, very buzz, but like I think it's important to recognize that you will be going on your phone at night before bed. I certainly do. I'm the first to say that, like, I will be on my phone before I hit the sack. So, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I turn it off an hour before bed and chuck it in another room and smash it up and repair it the next morning. That's not me. So, yeah.
And neither do I. And I don't think our message here is telling people what to do. It actually never has been. But it's pretty much just to illuminate that awareness because the reality is we do it, but you should be aware of it. You shouldn't think that, look, I'll be honest. I like scrolling a bit of TikTok for like 10, 15 minutes before I go to bed or watching like a YouTube video before I go to bed.
Kind of numbs the brain a little bit.
A little bit. And, I've always thought like, is this going to, like, I know it's probably not the best for my sleep, but it's kind of part of that nighttime routine.
And there are,
but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. I'm not going to pretend here and say, this is probably good for my sleep. But like, I feel to be functioning well. I suppose where it would become a problem was if I started going to bed like 1, 2 in the morning and I let that dictate.
Yes.
Tell me about instant gratification and its role with social media.
I think social media is a platform where we can get that instant gratification, where we can get those quick dopamine hits. We can see something we like. We can tap away at it. We can watch it and feel a lot better about ourselves very, very quickly. Now, that's where the word instant comes in because it's that instant hit, and that's where you can get into a dangerous loop of constantly seeking those instant hits rather than seeking long-term hits or something that's more advantageous or beneficial for you long-term. Dangerous cycle to enter.
Well, that's what Andrew Huberman says, which is there's nothing more kind of dangerous than unearned dopamine, which is you want dopamine where you've kind of earned it, not that quick fix.
And that's where, like, I guess social media ties into gambling and drugs and alcohol and all of that. So again, like we've said, it's just something to be aware of. We're not saying don't be on social media, don't get instant gratification, because we all like a little bit of instant gratification sometimes, and I don't think that's anything harmful. It's just about recognizing that it is there and entering and trying to seek it on a bigger scale too often, too much. That's where things start to take a backseat, and that's where other areas of your life might be impacted negatively.
And I suppose one of the kind of scary things, and again, like this is not meant to be a scare campaign, but they've done studies on gambling addicts because of the quick succession of dopamine spikes in your brain. It can actually lead to a bit of structural atrophy in kind of your frontal lobes, your frontal cortex, which means just your brain is literally, in layman terms, would be shrinking. And that's a kind of a scary thought. The thought that, the same dopamine, the same part of my brain is activated if I'm a gambling addict or a TikTok addict, that can actually lead to a bit of shrinkage in the brain. And I think that was published in a 2013 study. So, and they kind of did MRI scans for that. So it's, again, not a scare campaign, but once again, knowing that awareness, knowing that TikTok, we have to understand that these are all businesses as well. They want you on their platforms. And as much as I find TikTok entertaining, I love it, I can understand it can quickly lead to an addiction of just scrolling mindlessly. Because how many times are you doing nothing? You're on the toilet, you're scrolling through Instagram, you're scrolling through TikTok. It's unearned dopamine for the sake of it. And you'll just ask yourself, what is the point of my scrolling?
Yeah, well, I think the point of your scrolling can be a multitude of things, whether it is that quick instant gratification, whether it is that just you want to watch some mind-numbing content before you go to bed or when you're just chilling at a certain point in the day. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think I'm going to continuously harp on about that because there's so much information out there where people say how just bad it all is for you, which...
I mean, I've done a pretty good job of that, I think, in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, but I think something that we've done really well is emphasize that we all do it, and acknowledging it is the most important part of it because at the end of the day, it's just about balance, just like everything. We're going to keep coming back to that cliche, and there are so many other elements of your life, such as, your nighttime routine, that can impact you for good and for bad, whether it is how many hours of sleep you're getting at night, how much stress you've been feeling throughout the day, what your diet's been like, have you been exercising, and then social media. So like social media and technology, it's only one factor out of a multitude of factors. So recognizing that is really important, gives me a little bit of peace of mind, and it makes me realize that there are so many other areas of my life that I'm doing well, I can be improving, and social media is just one out of many.
Correct. And there's another point I want to make, but I actually wouldn't mind doing a future episode on it, and it's the fact that there's tons of misinformation on the internet. It's really easy to go down a rabbit hole where, you believe one line of thinking is accurate, and especially when we're in that impressionable stage of our life, there's nothing easier than kind of subscribing to a certain political view, a certain opinion, and as we said, being critical thinkers is so important. It can help us navigate that misinformation on social media. So there's nothing wrong with getting more knowledge and education, but just kind of do that extra level, deeper level of thinking and kind of question, why is this information being presented to me? What is the purpose of it? Similar to, why does TikTok feel so addictive? Well, it's because those who created the product want as many consumers on there as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So it's just having that kind of awareness.
Yeah.
And
there was that Netflix series. What was it called? The Social Network?
I never watched it.
Maybe? Or a documentary. Maybe not a series, documentary. I think it was called Social... I'm not sure. Listeners would know what we're talking about. But it harped on that point, how social media is trying to reel you in. And recognizing that is important. It's sending you these certain push notifications in order to get you on the app as well. We're effectively like just robots to them, and they've worked out how we're best programmed.
Correct.
That's a matter of fact. But like you said before, recognizing that what you're seeing on social media is not necessarily true all the time. There's a lot of bigotry on there. There's a lot of misleading information. So I think like when I come across things like that, reading comments is important. Like taking that extra step to actually just go through comments, see what other people are saying, because there can be some absolutely horrible things in comments, but there can be some really good analytical perspectives in comments as well that can change and challenge what you've just seen in a certain video too.
No, definitely. So we've kind of outlined the good, we've outlined the bad, and certainly the ugly. How do we now combine this into a message for our younger listeners? What do we tell them?
Recognizing that you're very impressionable. We are very impressionable, especially between, our teens to mid-20s and probably beyond as well. We're very impressionable people as humans. So acknowledging that is, I think, rule number one. Rule number two is understanding that things are important in moderation. It's not bad to be on social media. It's not bad to go cold turkey. It's about having a middle ground, right? And acknowledging that middle ground is something that we all do as humans is important. And I think it's probably quite dangerous to go cold turkey and then obviously to go excessive and to make sure your whole life depends on being on social media as well. It's about middle ground.
I suppose I subscribe to that as well. My whole kind of, pun intended, subscription, yeah, get it? But I suppose with myself, I've always been of the belief that unless it's kind of impacting you in other ways or it's having like it's like functionally impairing you in other ways, it's not that much of an issue. As I said, I have no issues scrolling through social media before I go to bed because I don't feel that it's necessarily damaging my sleep and my next day performance. If it was, I would make some modifications.
Yeah.
But until then, I don't think I will change unless there's some sort of data that comes out that says that, the more time spent here is like, I'm going to die if my life expectancy will go down because of all the, radiation that's emitted by phones. But, I think we're all going to die anyway. So
Exactly. But
what a grim note to end it on.
No, I think it's important to recognize that, and also important to recognize that there are some horrible things out there on social media. Okay. There's a lot of like cyberbullying that does happen. And again, this is not a scare tactic, but more so
an awareness tactic, rather.
More so an awareness tactic, and it's important to reach out to people around you, reach out to your family, talk to your friends if you are experiencing some sort of harassment, some sort of cyberbullying on social media, because it's so easy to do to anyone in this day and age. There's so much hatred and bigotry on there. So we keep coming back to this core message of recognizing those good quality people around you and employing them in your life when you're within times that are unfavorable to you. So
yeah, and I hope that really goes without saying. Reach out to your teachers, to your parents, especially if you do feel like you are being bullied on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case is, because these things do need to be stamped out. It's part of unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
And we just have to learn to navigate it. And, I think schools are doing an excellent job now with bringing in kind of educational workshops about how to navigate cyberbullying, especially what to put out on social media. We didn't even mention it, but social media, the way we should use it, we should understand that what we can put out there can stay with us. And I'm actually a bit annoyed that we forgot to mention this point, so I'll mention it now. Huge, whenever you're going, we've been told when we're younger, be careful what you put out on social media, because there is a digital footprint. Things can stay with you. When you're going for a job, a stupid comment that you made as a joke can come back and bite you on the ass 20, 30 years down the line. We say it with celebrities now when they made some sort of comment that they thought was funny at the time. And look, it may have been funny, but things can really work against you. So be really wise. Yeah. What you put out there is what's going to stay.
Think about what you're commenting. Think about, if someone said this to me, would I appreciate it? Would I want to be told this thing? Because so many people are just keyboard warriors, and face to face they would never say such things. So just be mindful of that. And
enjoy it. Use it to your advantage. That would be our concluding message. If you want to elevate skills, social media is great for that. If you want to learn a great gym program, ask ChatGPT. I think it's pretty good for that. It's been informing my push-pull legs.
That's another episode.
And learning how to cook. Use social media. Get into those Facebook groups. They're all great platforms where you can learn and elevate and grow your skills. Any concluding messages from you?
No, that's right, mate. I think you summed it up perfectly. The opportunities are endless, and we're big advocates for it. So we hope you guys have taken some good messages out of this episode. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Keep the conversation going. So thank you for joining us. And if you really did enjoy it, flick it across to someone. It's important to spread that message of positivity. And let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.
Like, subscribe, rate the show 5 stars, and have a lovely rest of your Tuesday.
Bye-bye.